Welcome to the Bernie's Bootlegs podcast, where we explore the stories of successful musicians and share their perspectives on being an artist in a digital age. I'm your host, Kenny McCabe, and let's get into the show. In today's episode, we're speaking with trombonist, vocalist, and composer Seth Weaver. We discussed growing up in Tennessee and the Nashville music scene, how he ended up as both a vocalist and trombonist, his experience at North Texas State University, what inspired him to start writing for large ensembles, how he made a living during and after college, the joys and difficulties of managing a big band, how to write and arrange literally anywhere, his strategy for funding his album, his advice for younger musicians, and much more. We were battling the spotty hotel Wi-Fi for this episode, so there are some small audio glitches, but overall it's very listenable. I hope you will forgive me. You can find Seth on his website at sethweavermusic.com and also on Instagram at sethweavermusic. And so without further ado, I bring you my conversation with Seth Weaver. Okay, guys, I'm here with Seth Weaver. Seth, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, it's great to be here, and thank you.
Yeah, man. So you are currently in the Caribbean. I don't know if people will be able to see the ocean or the water behind you, but it's there. And if people are only listening to the audio, then you'll have to use your imagination, unfortunately. But yeah, man. So what's been going on?
Well, let's see. I am not in New York currently, which is good because I hear it's cold right now. Like it's maybe first snow this Friday or something like that. So it's nice to be warm. But yeah, I'm in the Caribbean right now, and we're playing a few gigs on the island, and be headed back on Wednesday. So, but yeah, it's been great so far.
Absolutely. So you are originally from Tennessee, which is super interesting to me. I've never been to Tennessee, so maybe you can tell us a little bit about Tennessee and growing up and playing music as a youngster.
Yeah, so I grew up in a very, very small town south of Nashville called Leapers Fork, and our neighbors were the nearest neighbors were about a mile away, and so that was pretty cool upbringing because you just kind of do whatever the heck you want to. You walk out in the woods and go swimming, and so I really grew up outside. And I actually grew up playing bluegrass and Irish Celtic music. That was like my introduction to music with jazz. My dad plays trumpet, not professionally, but he has like thousands of CDs and records that I grew up listening to, and the music scene in Nashville was great. So that was also, I had wonderful teachers growing up there, and also was able to have like the small town feel, which is really, really nice combination. I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah, no doubt. And I know quite a few people who have actually moved from New York to Nashville, which is super interesting. There's apparently a very strong music scene there, and so I would suggest that people check it out. I don't know, any other thoughts about it?
Yeah, it's really been amazing to see. So Nashville was, it's always been a really amazing city to play music. The jingle scene through like basically the late 80s, early 90s was incredible. People made their livings, playing, just random jingles and recording for various artists and stuff like that. And then Nashville had a little bit of a slump, like the symphony almost went out of business and stuff like that. And then right when I was probably like early 2000s, like kind of saw this kind of shift, and everything started to really just, there was a lot of artists moving to town, and the music scene has just taken off. Like the symphony, they got the new Symphony Center, the Schermerhorn, and the Nashville Jazz Workshop open with Laura Meacham and Roger Spencer, who are really incredible educators and have done so much for the community. And so it's really incredible to see it just explode. Like the last 10 years. I moved away 10 years ago, and it's so cool to go back because it's like just a new city every year I go back. It's just so alive, and a lot of young, really talented people are going there to start their careers in photography, like graphic design, music, everything. So it's a cool place to be.
Most definitely. And so you are a trombonist and a vocalist, which is a super interesting combination. And so maybe you can give us some context about just that whole thing in terms of like the timeline. Like, did those things develop concurrently, or how did that come about?
Well, I grew up, I've always sung since day one. And I started singing in choirs when I was about like third grade. And I basically was in like, all the plays through all the way up to high school, and I took voice lessons. And basically what happened, I started trombone in 6th grade, and I really, really got serious about jazz in probably like 8th grade, 9th grade. I started playing more jazz violin at that time, and because I was trying to do all 3 things at once. And I was like, okay, so I have some serious technical problems on violin. Like, I had very bad technique because for some reason I never really got it together. So I was like, okay, but I've learned classical trombone, so I have like that together. And I was like, okay, it's going to make a lot more sense for me to take the instrument that I feel like I'm more like it's going to be more serious for me. And so I basically kind of put violin to the side, and I focused on trombone and singing. And I feel like both of those are very similar. Like, trombone, actually my range, because I'm a baritone, is the exact same as trombone. So I even do like similar warm-ups on both. My goal is to get both of them to be pretty much the same. If you hear me singing, if you hear me playing trombone, I want it to be like, oh, that's Seth. And I feel like both of them really complement each other. Just thinking wise, I want to be thinking as a vocalist, as a trombone player, and thinking as an instrumentalist, as a singer, to a certain extent. But I really love doing both, and I couldn't really imagine dropping one of them at this point. It's just they're both very fulfilling. So
yeah, absolutely. And so you graduate high school in the Nashville area, and tell us what the next step is for you.
Okay, so I graduated in '09, and I went to North Texas University, and I loved it there. 4 years there, and a lot of my friends in North Texas have moved to New York City. I'm sure you've interviewed or planning to interview tons of those guys and girls that moved to New York City. But it's a really close-knit community, and it was really great growing, kind of like figuring out stuff there, because the community is it's really relaxed. It's not, there's not really well, Dallas and Fort Worth are great music scenes, but it was, Denton, you can kind of like figure things out, and if you screw up, you learn. It's not like the end of your career. If you like, I forgot a mouthpiece when I was in sophomore, which I've never done again to this day, but stuff like that, where you can just kind of like figure things out and figure out how to get things together. So I was really happy to be there. The big bands, I love playing big bands. I love writing for big bands, and that was a good place to be with that, because Rich Dross is an incredible arranging teacher, and they also have a great vocal program as well. So I was able to take some voice lessons with some wonderful teachers there on trombone and voice. So it was a really good combination. Yeah, and portable.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And that school is obviously known for having a great big band program as well. Whether it be the 1 o'clock or which is obviously perhaps in the most public consciousness of all of the big bands, but they have many more. And so, do you think that there's any relation between going to school there and studying and being in that environment and ending up starting your own big band several years later?
Definitely, that had a huge part in it. My roommate in college, or one of my roommates, Drew Zaremba. I don't know if you know him, but incredible arranger and composer. And I remember rooming with him. I was like, oh, well, he writes for big band. And so I've never written a big band chart ever at that point. And I was like, okay, so I spent a whole summer basically figuring it out, and I wrote like a chart every week for like the whole summer. So like 12 weeks or something. I wrote a chart every week, and through that summer, I kind of figured out a lot of stuff, and I made a lot of mistakes. I would always bring them into a reading band every week, and there were plenty of train wrecks. But the being around big bands all the time was really wonderful. And I feel like even if I hadn't started a big band, just the experience of writing for that many people has been really helpful for me, because it kind of translates to whatever project I might be writing for, like even like a 3-horn thing. Just knowing exactly what it's going to sound like, and having the experience writing for big band has been really, really helpful for me.
Yeah, man, I'd love to talk more about that, but just going along with the timeline here, so you end up doing grad school in New York at Manhattan School. What was the thinking behind that? Had you applied to any other schools, or were you set on going to Manhattan School, or were you set on going to New York? What was your thinking?
I was totally set on coming to New York. I auditioned for, NYU, Juilliard, Manhattan School of Music, and Miami, and MSU, Michigan State University, because I had been taking Skype lessons from Mike Deese. It was, incredible educator, trombone player, composer, everything. And I was taking lessons with him, and I really wanted to study with him there, but I also wanted to be in New York. So it was one of the toughest decisions I've ever had to make. It's like, what, and I since then kept in contact with Mike, and every time he's in town, I try to hear him play, because in that itself is a learning. Anybody that's on that level, it's just being around them, you learn stuff. But yeah, my mindset on coming to New York, and I auditioned everywhere, and I decided on Manhattan School of Music, which I think was the right decision for me. And the level of students there is really amazing, and everyone's there to learn, was there to learn, and really inspiring. It was amazing to me just how much everyone was doing. They're part of all these stuff. They're applying for grants. They're writing for various ensembles. They've got tours lined up. And it was really cool just suddenly be in this atmosphere where people really make it happen. And, just feel like, okay, well, let's see, what am I doing? Trying to get on that level. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, just being in that environment can definitely propel you to the next level, I think. And so you graduate from there, and then your first few years out of school, what were you up to? What were you working? I mean, what kind of work were you doing? How were you making a living? What did that picture look like?
Definitely. So I graduated in 2015, and the first year, I remember, the first year I got out of school. Let's see. Yeah, I was teaching a little bit. I had a small studio. Actually, I still have some students that I was teaching since then, which has been really cool. I was teaching some. I had, various off and on gigs, freelancing. Let's see. It was, New York can be tough, and I remember that first year I was like, it was definitely struggle to a certain extent. I mean, I wasn't starving, obviously, but it was really, I was going to sessions every night, doing that whole thing. I went to a session almost every night for a year right after school, just trying to get into various, groups and playing as much as possible and trying to learn as much as possible. So that first year was sessions, teaching a little bit and playing some weird gigs and shedding a ton. And we were starting to get the big band together. We played actually we got a residency at Zinc Bar the month I graduated. So we were playing every month. And that first year I booked, we were booked a whole bunch. We played like 2 or 3 gigs a month for a while, which is a lot for a big band, at least for me. So yeah, that's what I was up to. Yeah, just playing trombone.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people will look at the whole big band thing and they'll be like, wow, like, someone started a big band. And I think my main question, and this might be the same question as many folks out there, is why would you do that?
That is a wonderful question. Since day one, I mean, like when I was 3 years old, I've been listening to big bands. Like my mom tells a story. I wouldn't go to sleep until I listened to Harry Connick Jr.'s Red Light, Blue Light. So like since day one, I was that. I grew up playing in a big band my dad plays in to this day called the Establishment Big Band. I played in many big bands in Nashville and when I was in high school, and then big bands and all this stuff. So it's constantly, big band has always been a part of my life. And I did a big band recital at MSM, and I was like, okay, this is cool. I have all this music, I had probably 25 charts, 30 charts at the time, and it was something I was like, well, this is cool. I feel like I would like to, pursue this. And since then, I've added a whole bunch of music to the book. But the community of big bands, I think, is really important, and has been really just great being around so many creative people. Every month, it's just honestly amazing to play with, the best musicians in the world consistently with the big band. And the creative energy, the hang afterwards is always great. I learned so much from everyone's playing. It's really, I think big bands to a certain extent are a really great way for people for the community to stay alive. And I've thought a lot about that recently. But if you play the gigs I'm playing this weekend are smaller horn sections, like 3, 6 piece, and usually just one trombone player, sometimes 2. But in a big band, you're with 4 trombone players, and so the connections you make on those gigs are, you make great friends, and there's a really sense of community with big bands, and I think that's one of the most important things to me. Leading one was just being around so many creative people all the time, being able to write music that hopefully complements their energy and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, going along with the whole big band endeavor, I would love to have you give some context around the realities of trying to book a big band, because obviously it can be very difficult, I would imagine, although I've never personally tried to do it. But just that kind of format, there are just so many potential issues with trying to book it. Just logistical issues, like how is it, like you can't fit a big band in most restaurants, and so there's a very particular kind of venue that you would need to book. And so I'd love for you to give some context around what it's actually like out there to book a big band.
So yeah, I have been very fortunate with, I've had 2 residencies. We had Zinc Bar for almost 4 years. We played every month. And then we have a new residency at the Gin Mill, which is pretty much a sports bar up there, but then you walk downstairs and it's this really cool speakeasy. And it's a little cramped, though not quite as cramped as Zinc Bar, because Zinc Bar you have 2 with the big band, or at least the way we set up, we just set up in a big line. So brass was a line, saxophone on the ground, and not a lot of extra room. Gin Mill is a little bit larger, but so those 2 residencies have pretty much kept the band working every month. So I always try to write a new chart for the band every month just to keep things fresh. So booking the band, so right out of school, I was more proactive about booking the band in lots of different places. And since then, since we have the residency, I've kind of used it more as like a workshop kind of thing for me as a writer. And so I've written new music for the band and used that to and not necessarily trying to book the band as much as I can. using it as kind of like a creative outlet for me. So I know a lot of really gung-ho band leaders that, try to book corporate events with their big bands and stuff like that. And maybe one day for me, right now, it's, we all play, that kind of stuff. And I wanted the big band to be exactly, what I wanted. So just, I can play literally any music that I want, and it'll be fine for the venue. And using it is the artistic outlet for me. So I haven't booked another show in a while. We played the Django in April, and hoping to play there again closer to the release date. But yeah, so that's my experience booking the band. Yeah.
Right on. And recently I had another big band leader, very prolific, Stephen Feifke, on the show. And I think by the time this is out, that episode will be available. I don't know what episode number it'll be, but people can go check that out. And we talked a little bit about composition, and big band writing, and one of his philosophies, I guess, is just to try and write something every day, whether or not you feel entirely inspired to do so. Is that a philosophy that you subscribe to at all?
Absolutely. I'm very much a nerd, so I keep voice memos on my phone, and I literally sing into my phone at least once a day, something that I'm thinking about. I do actually a lot of my arranging, just literally just think through arrangement, and you can kind of create something in your head on the subway. I find that's even more useful sometimes than me sitting down at the piano and going through it, because you kind of get a more concentrated kind of. If you're sitting at the piano, you get distracted and stuff like that. But if you're sitting the way, I feel like I can really concentrate and think through the arrangement. If I get an idea, I can sing in my voice memos. I have a lot of my students doing that. Is always be writing something, because that also I think is really helpful as an instrumentalist. If you're always writing something, you're constantly thinking about soloing in that way. Being more compositional instead of lacking that that feel. So yeah, I always writing. I always like to write several different things at once as well. So not just one chart. I like to write 2 or 3, because I tend to be like, okay, this isn't working on this one. I can flip it over to another one. Work on this one for a while. So I like to write several different things at once too. So at least that works for me.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and that sort of approach is not something that I've actually heard in the context of writing. It's something that I've heard in other contexts, like people who read multiple books at once, because for example, if you're reading a book and you kind of get bored, but if you say to yourself, I'm going to force myself to finish this book, you're never going to do it. You're just going to avoid it. And so in a way, it's better to kind of skip around, so you can always at least be doing something instead of trying to force yourself and have, and kind of feel stuck. And so it kind of sounds like the same process.
Definitely. And, if you're struggling with, ideas for anything, I just switch charts. I've been doing that for a while. And found it very helpful.
Yeah, man. And so one thing that you've done recently is decided to put out the Seth Weaver Big Band album, which when is that going to be released? Next year sometime, right?
So yeah, I'm super excited about that. We went in the studio in January, went to Bunker, recorded my debut album. Actually, this will be my first record. And we are releasing that in March 27th through Outside in Music, and be available everywhere at that point. But it's going to be really, really excited about everything.
Yeah, man, and I'm super excited for it as well. And one of the things that you put out there in order to be able to help the production costs and fund the album was a Kickstarter campaign, which I'd love to, give a little more context regarding. And so maybe you can just talk a little bit about why you decided to do a Kickstarter and what your strategy was going into it in order to, ensure that it was successful, because you did raise over $10,000, which that's a serious chunk of change. So.
Sure thing. So I figured the album, I sat down and made a list of everything that needed to happen for it to come out, and kind of made a best case scenario and then a worst case scenario, and I took the worst case scenario amount, and I was like, okay, so this is going to be close to $15,000, which is a lot of money for one record. And I know a lot of people that have the philosophy is more is better than doing one album every 3 years. Just putting out one album every year, which I'm going to be doing. Actually, after this record, I'm planning the next record at the moment and recording it actually before the next one is out. I'm just keeping it rolling. But I was like, okay, the only way this is going to be possible for me financially is if I raise a certain amount of money. And I thrown in the possibility of doing 5,000, and I ended up on the number 10,000 because the album actually went up to like 20 grand for everything with just every cost. And I hired a publicist for everything, and because I figured big band albums is something you want to really do correctly, because you put in so much work arranging over the years, getting everyone together. The cost of the band just recording is tremendous, because I wanted to pay everyone for their time, and not just do the free lunch thing. And so that all came together, and it was going to be that much. So I basically divided it in half. I was like, I'm going to drop $10,000 of my own money and hopefully raise the other half, so that kind of balances everything out a little bit. So I went into it with that idea, and I kind of designed this plan. I have a mailing list. I use Instagram a lot. I use Facebook a little bit less over the last few years, but kind of made a video. I reached out to a lot of different groups on Facebook, Instagram that all focus on supporting arts projects, and that was really helpful. Facebook groups, all that stuff, but kind of just kept not annoying levels, hopefully. I wanted to post every other day for 30 days, and that's what I did. And it worked. So
Yeah, man, it definitely did work, and I just wanted to touch on that topic because I'm sure there are a lot of folks out there, a lot of musicians listen to the podcast, and might want to do a Kickstarter at some point in order to fund their album, because albums, as you say, they're expensive.
Yeah.
They are not cheap, and especially if you want to do them well, and actually pay the musicians like you're saying, instead of just being like, hey, like I'll give you like pizza and beer, or whatever people do. You want to be able to pay people what you feel that their skills are worth, and so definitely expensive. So yeah, man, what is the album called? Is it just called Seth Weaver Big Band?
So it's actually really a really personal title for me, Truth, which is the name that my mentor in high school gave me. There's just like a nickname. He always called me Truth for some reason. He had nicknames for everyone. And if anyone is listening that's in the Nashville scene over the past 20 years, they'll know, 30, 40 years, he affected so many people. But Billy Adair was really the only reason why I'm playing jazz, still. So he basically gave opportunities to hundreds of musicians through the years. He let me play with the Blair School of Music Big Band for 4 years while in high school and sing with them, do records with them, go on tour with them when I was like, 15, So he made sure that I had great teachers and just unbelievable kindness. And so I decided my first record would be dedicated to him, and basically all of the amazing things he's done for countless musicians that are playing and doing very amazing things to this day. And he passed away, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago. I think that's right. But it's still, to this day, it's just like, I wish, give him a call sometime. Very, very unbelievably kind person. And I feel like the world has, there's a limited amount of those people. And so, yeah, that's why. Truth. That's the name.
Yeah, man. Beautiful story. So to kind of wrap this up, what's your advice for a younger musician who would like to do the same kind of thing that you're doing? Maybe not necessarily own a big band or run a big band, but let's just say they want to play music in New York. What's your advice to them?
My advice would be kind, Be that I think is very important. And you think big picture, and that's something that I've definitely struggled with. Is that it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day in New York. It's like, oh, I didn't get called for that gig. Didn't get called for that gig. Wish I was playing with this person. But if you're thinking, big picture, if you're headed in the right direction, just have patience. And I've always subscribed to the philosophy: if you're working as hard as you can, there's really nothing else you can do. So I worked very hard, and so basically that in itself is comforting. Even if certain things don't fall exactly as you want them to, just the comfort in knowing that you're working very hard and being just nice, generally nice to people, not for anything in return, obviously, but being a nice person, working very hard, and showing up. That's another big one that I've seen over the years, is the people that show up and are just there are the people that get the good gigs. And I don't know if you watch New Girl, but the Joe Biden is what the on the show. It's just be there, just be Joe Biden. Yeah.
I'm sure that there are many people out there listening to this that will understand what you just said. I do not, however, but that's okay. I don't get that many references at all, but that's my fault. I'm just very, very uncultured, but but yeah, no, those are all important things. Show up on time, be punctual. Work hard, because at the end of the day, how hard you work, that's the only thing that's in your control. You can't control who's going to call you back, who's going to call you for a gig. You can't control what venue is going to dig your music and want to book you. You can't control those things. You can only control how hard you work. So definitely control what you control, and don't worry about the other stuff. Just focus on what you can control. Mm-hmm. And also just be nice. I mean, it sounds cliche, but I mean well, I think the important thing, and this comes up all the time, is be nice. But like you said, don't be nice just to be able to take advantage of some relationship that you're developing. You want to be a genuine person. So, yeah, exactly. And so, Seth, where is the best place for people to find you?
Oh, right. Well, let's see. Check me out on Instagram. Everything is Seth Weaver Music. So you can look at YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. I'm about to redo my whole web in January, so everything's going to be really fresh, getting some new videos and everything. So, but yeah, check out Seth Weaver Music anywhere. Yep.
Yeah, man. Seth Weaver Big Band debut album, Truth, coming out in, did you say March?
March 27th.
March 27th, right on. People will be able to check that out and follow you on all of the usual places, but until then, I just have to say thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This was an absolute blast. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Stay on the line for 1 second. Thanks again.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you so much for checking out the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you happen to be listening to this. And if you enjoyed the podcast, consider giving it a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. For more episodes, please visit berniesbootlegs.com. Thanks again, and see you guys next time.